It's strange how silence can feel louder than noise. You stand in a crowded room, surrounded by laughter and conversation, yet it all feels like thunder rolling inside your chest. Your heart races, your thoughts spiral, and you wonder if everyone can see right through you. You want to speak, but the words hide somewhere behind your ribs. If you've ever felt that tension between wanting connection and fearing rejection, you already understand social anxiety. But here's the truth that many people miss. Social anxiety isn't about disliking people. It's not even about being shy. It's about fearing to be seen and misunderstood at the same time. Social anxiety is a psychological struggle that runs deeper than personality or preference. It's not just a habit of worrying. It's a nervous system pattern, a biological reflex. It's the body's way of saying, be careful, you might get hurt. Psychologists describe it as an excessive fear of negative evaluation. The mind becomes a radar for rejection, constantly scanning for signs that something's wrong. A pause, a glance, a slight shift in tone. They all feel like proof that you've made a mistake. Your brain interprets these harmless social cues as threats. Research shows that people with social anxiety often have an overactive amygdala, the brain's fear center. That tiny part of your brain, meant to protect you from danger, starts reacting as if you're under attack, even in safe situations. A simple hello can trigger a full-body stress response. It's not your fault. It's your biology. Your brain is trying to protect you from emotional pain because, to the human mind, rejection can feel just as real as physical danger. But social anxiety doesn't always show itself in obvious ways. It's not always shaky hands or stuttered words. Sometimes it looks like the person who seems fine, smiling, polite, maybe even confident, but inside, they're fighting an invisible war. It looks like canceling plans you were excited for. It looks like replaying conversations in your head hours after they've ended. It looks like acting natural while your thoughts run a marathon of self-criticism. And underneath all of it, there's something powerful and painful: sensitivity. People with social anxiety often notice more than others: tone shifts, micro-expressions, emotional undercurrents. They read the room with incredible accuracy. But that same gift becomes a burden when it turns inward. Awareness transforms into self-surveillance. Every word, every gesture, every silence feels magnified. It's not vanity. It's vigilance. The mind is constantly asking, am I safe here? The roots of social anxiety are complex. Sometimes it's genetic. Studies show that it can run in families, linked to temperament and brain chemistry. Other times it's learned, formed in environments where you were criticized, dismissed, or made to feel unsafe expressing yourself. When those patterns repeat, your brain starts to associate people with danger. For some, it's born from moments of humiliation or exclusion. For others, it's a lifetime of being told to just be confident. You begin to think there's something wrong with you for struggling, and that belief only deepens the fear. Eventually, you develop what psychologists call self-focused attention. You stop experiencing the world and start observing yourself through the eyes of others. You become hyper-aware of your every move, as if your life is being broadcast on an invisible screen. You begin to monitor your own breathing, posture, expressions, all in an effort to avoid being judged. Social anxiety is not about attention-seeking. It's about self-protection. It's the fear of emotional exposure. The fear that if people saw you exactly as you are, they might turn away. That's why simple advice like, don't care what people think, doesn't work. People with social anxiety already know that, logically. They know most people aren't paying attention to them. But logic doesn't calm the body. When your nervous system believes you're in danger, reasoning becomes irrelevant. So what do you do when your body becomes your battlefield? When your silence feels like a scream? When you try to appear calm, but your heart is racing? Here's something important. Social anxiety isn't always a flaw. Sometimes it's an overdeveloped form of empathy. Your brain has learned to care too much about others' reactions. You anticipate how they might feel, so you adjust, filter, and soften yourself to avoid discomfort. In trying to protect others from awkwardness, you absorb it all yourself. That same sensitivity, though, is what makes you deeply human. You notice emotions others ignore. You understand pain without words. You sense what people need before they ask. And while that can hurt, it's also a kind of superpower, one that, when balanced, can lead to deeper connection and genuine compassion. Still, Living with social anxiety is exhausting. It's like carrying a mirror that reflects your every flaw. You rehearse conversations before they happen and replay them after they end. You live inside the echo of your own self-consciousness. And the harder you try to control it, the stronger it gets. Psychologists call this the paradox of control. The more you try to suppress anxiety, the more power it gains. Because when you fight fear, your brain thinks the fear itself is dangerous, and so the cycle continues. The goal isn't to erase fear. It's to understand it. To recognize that your body isn't betraying you, it's protecting you. And when you learn to see your anxiety not as an enemy, but as, that's where healing starts. Healing from social anxiety isn't about becoming fearless. It's about learning that fear doesn't have to control you. Therapists often use methods like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or exposure therapy to retrain the brain's response to fear. In CBT, you learn to question your anxious thoughts and replace them with more balanced perspectives. In exposure therapy, you gradually face social situations that trigger anxiety, small steps, repeated gently, until your body learns that these moments are not threats. Through repetition, your brain rewires itself. You begin to associate social interactions with safety rather than danger. You start to realize that stumbling over a word doesn't mean failure, that silence doesn't mean rejection, and that being seen doesn't have to feel like being judged. Because the truth is, healing social anxiety isn't just psychological, it's spiritual in a way. It's the act of learning to be seen, fully and imperfectly, without apology. At its core, social anxiety is a distortion of self-perception. Somewhere along the way, the mirror between who you are and how you believe others see you became warped. You began to think that your value depended on other people's approval, that your presence had to be justified, that you had to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that felt too sharp. You learned to play small, to speak softly, to blend in, to avoid taking up too much space. But one day, something shifts. You get tired of hiding. You realize that the cost of being invisible is far greater than the fear of being seen. That's the moment real change begins. Not through pretending to be confident, but through gentle self-compassion. Because confidence isn't the absence of fear, it's the willingness to move forward despite it. The most confident people aren't fearless. They've simply stopped fighting their fear. They carry it with grace. They allow it to exist without letting it lead. And that's the quiet courage of those living with social anxiety, the daily bravery that often goes unseen. Every time you enter a room, even when your chest feels tight, every time you speak up while your hands shake, every time you choose connection over avoidance, that's courage. The world tends to celebrate loud confidence, the speeches, the stage presence, the spotlight, but it often forgets the strength of silent endurance. People with social anxiety show a different kind of bravery, the kind that whispers, "I'll try again tomorrow." And here's something few people realize. Those with social anxiety often become some of the most emotionally intelligent individuals you'll ever meet. They spend so much time observing human behavior, analyzing emotions, and understanding interactions that they develop a deep, intuitive sense of how people feel. They know what it's like to be overlooked, so they make sure others feel seen. They understand what rejection feels like, so they move through the world with quiet kindness. Their empathy, once a source of pain, becomes their strength. But that same awareness can also become a cage. When you spend all your time analyzing others, you forget to actually connect. You read the room, but you stop feeling it. You focus so much on how you're perceived that you lose touch with who you are. That's why healing from social anxiety isn't just about calming fear. It's about rediscovering your authentic self beneath layers of self-protection. Imagine a child playing freely in a park, laughing without checking who's watching. That's what freedom once felt like, before anxiety learned your name. Social anxiety, in many ways, is a memory of emotional danger. It's your mind saying, "Don't let that happen again." But healing begins when you realize, you're not that vulnerable child anymore. You're safe now. You're allowed to exist, to speak, to take up space. Your voice deserves to be heard. And here's a paradox. People with social anxiety aren't antisocial. In fact, they're often deeply social. They crave connection more than most. They just want to do it perfectly, to say the right thing, to avoid discomfort, to be accepted by everyone. But perfection kills connection. Because people don't bond over flawlessness, They bond over honesty, vulnerability, and shared imperfection. When you stop trying to impress others and start trying to connect, something changes. The less you perform, the more people trust you. The less you filter yourself, the more genuine your relationships become. That's the great irony of social anxiety. The moment you stop trying to appear likable, you naturally become more relatable. Healing is not about erasing your sensitivity. It's about learning to use it with balance. Self-awareness, when turned inward with compassion, becomes wisdom instead of worry. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you start asking, "What's happening inside me right now?" That shift from judgment to curiosity changes everything. Because curiosity invites presence. And presence is the antidote to fear. When you're curious, you stop rehearsing and start noticing. You see that most people are too busy thinking about themselves to analyze you. You start realizing that not every silence is rejection. Sometimes it's just peace. And when your nervous system learns safety again, connection becomes possible. You stop living like a performer and start living like a participant. Progress won't always be smooth. Some days you'll feel brave, others you'll retreat. Some conversations will flow, others will make your heart race. That's okay. Healing isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Over time, the fear that once ruled you becomes just another feeling, one you can hold, breathe through, and let pass. And slowly, something beautiful happens. Your empathy transforms from a burden into a gift. You begin to use your sensitivity not as a defense mechanism, but as a bridge to connect, to understand, to care deeply without losing yourself. Because beneath all that anxiety lies a heart that cares too much, a spirit that feels too deeply, and a longing that is profoundly human. There's a quiet revolution happening in how psychology understands social anxiety. For years, the focus was on fixing what was wrong, treating anxiety as a defect to be eliminated. But now, researchers and therapists are shifting the perspective. Instead of asking, "How do we get rid of anxiety?" the question has become, "What wisdom does it hold?" Because social anxiety isn't a flaw in personality. It's a sign that your nervous system once loved safety too much. It's proof that your mind learned survival through carefulness, that your sensitivity was once protection. You tried to blend in to avoid pain, but you weren't meant to blend in forever. You're meant to grow, to bloom, even if it's quiet, even if it's slow. Healing doesn't always look dramatic. It often begins with small acts of rebellion against fear. Holding eye contact a second longer. Speaking when your heart says stay silent. Allowing a pause in conversation without rushing to fill it. These moments might look insignificant, but they're revolutionary. They're proof that you're choosing presence over protection. And every small victory matters. Each time you face fear without retreating, your brain rewires. You teach it that you're safe now. And one day, you realize that anxiety no longer decides what you can or cannot do. But here's something few people talk about. When anxiety begins to fade, there can be a strange emptiness. For so long, fear was part of your identity. It shaped your choices, your habits, even your sense of self. Without it, you might wonder, who am I now? That's the quiet, beautiful stage of healing. Rediscovering who you are beyond the fear. You start noticing joy in places you never looked before. You realize that your anxiety never erased who you were. It just covered you. Beneath it, there was always someone worth knowing. People often assume that social anxiety means you dislike others. But the truth is, you often love people too much. You think deeply about how your words might affect them. You imagine their reactions before they even happen. You replay every moment to make sure you didn't cause discomfort. It's not that you want distance. You want closeness, but you fear hurting others or being hurt. You live in their imagined thoughts instead of your own truth. And that's the bittersweet beauty of a sensitive heart. You long to be accepted so badly that you forget you already are. The final step in understanding social anxiety is realizing that acceptance starts from within. The same patience, compassion, and understanding you offer others, that must finally be given to yourself. You are not your anxious thoughts. You are not the moments you felt invisible. You are the persistence that kept showing up anyway. You are the person who still tries, still hopes, still dreams of belonging, even after years of fear. That effort is not weakness, it's resilience. And one day, the storm softens. The anxiety that once filled every corner of your mind becomes an echo in the distance. You walk into a room, and your body no longer braces for impact. You speak, and the words sound like they belong to you. When silence comes, it doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels like peace. That's the moment you realize something profound. You were never being judged as harshly as you judged yourself. You were never as exposed as you imagined. You were simply human, beautifully flawed, imperfectly alive, and more than enough all along. And that's what healing from social anxiety is really about. Not becoming fearless, but finding ease. The ease of being seen without performing. The ease of existing without apology. The ease of knowing your worth doesn't depend on how others see you. It's something you were born with. So if you're listening to this right now, take a breath. You've been fighting a battle most people can't see, but you're still here. You still care. You still have hope. And that matters. Because courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the whisper that says, "I'll try again tomorrow." And that whisper, gentle, trembling, persistent, can change everything.